Welcome to the Rock Review. I'm Eric Dahl, and I'm talking with Jim Allard from Eventide, and also the award-winning, Grammy award-winning, and also he got the Les Paul Innovation Award at Winter NAMM, Peter Frampton.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show,
Jim.
guys.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
It's so fun talking with you guys, and obviously you're gear nuts like I am, and obviously with 17 million albums sold with Frampton Comes Alive, and you've been working with Eventide for years.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe if it was 1973, right, was when you say Jim and Richard started.
Richard and Tony. Yes.
Tony started.
Yeah. 71 and 73. Yeah.
Right. Okay. 71. Well, I was in America at that time, and that's when I got to know them. I think at that point.
Right.
So I believe because there was a Tony had sent me something. A magazine piece when they were going back in time, and when someone was taking the very first harmonized pitch card with it in a DDL. It was called a 1745,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it was being sent over to Electric Lady Studios for an artist there, and I said, it was me, because I'd heard about it already because of and so it was. Tony agreed. Yeah, they must have been rushing that round for you. Wow. And then that was the first time. And then I got like one of the very first ones for my own studio, and then we used it on the road too. We were probably the first person to use it on the road.
Well, and with your sound also, Peter, and with your incredible music and albums and everything, you really integrated a lot of great effects like the Eventide, and from those vintage ones that you've used. Now you're also working with their new gear, and they just came out with the Rose.
Yes.
And now you're using that in the studio as well.
Yes. It's something that Tony sent me one, and he said the only thing he couldn't tell me is who Rose is. That's the only thing. But which one day I will find out. But,
right.
But he said, we've got this delay that I would really like you to try, because it's got a special kind of modulation, which Jim can explain. What is the difference between?
Well, it's a hybrid architecture, so it's got a digital delay line, but then the rest of it's analog. And even in analog, we have a sweepable delay. So we sweep the sample rate.
Right.
So it's similar to a bucket brigade type thing, but it doesn't have the disadvantages of bucket brigade, because you can get, because of the digital delay line, you can get delays from 10 microseconds all the way up to 50 seconds.
Wow.
And still have that sweepability.
Yeah.
And it's a really unique sound.
You can have, that's without any modulation, and then you bring it in, and it's.
Wow.
It's a full feel.
That's beautiful. Your Phoenix Les Paul does sound very nice through it also.
Well, thank you, yeah.
It's weird to be sitting this close.
Yeah, right. It's like going, wow.
It's so cool. I mean, I have to pinch myself still, that I got it back.
It's such an amazing story that you did, and that it was your favorite guitar.
Yeah.
And just like talking about the Eventide pieces of gear that, you've had for years and still use. Also to merge that with your Phoenix.
I know, and my brother still has that very first 1745. I sent it over to him because he said, have you got any effects you're not using? So I said, well, I got this one that, from the old days.
Right.
So it still works. It's still working fine.
That is so amazing. Now obviously going out on your big tour this year, which is your farewell tour, you'll be using the Eventide gear as well.
Yes. I've always got something Eventide out there. So we're not quite sure which piece at the moment, but hoping to integrate this at rehearsals. So
that's incredible. Well, and I found it so interesting too, Peter. Starting out as a young man playing your grandmother's instrument,
right,
before you even got into guitar, and that was the banjolele.
That's correct. Wow, you've done your homework, I say so. Yes, it was. It's a ukulele shaped like a banjo.
Right.
Banjolele, that's what they call it. And it's exactly the same tuning as a ukulele. And so my grandmother had one of those that a vaudeville star had given her. She was way into vaudeville in England. And so she gave it to my dad and said, put it in the attic, and then one day, maybe when Peter's big enough, he might want to play it. So we were up in the attic and found this little case, and my dad and I, and said, I said, what's that? And he said, oh, that's something your grandmother wanted you to maybe play one day. So would you like to see it? So that's when he got it out, and he taught me, a couple of songs.
How amazing is that?
So
carrying on the family tradition.
7 or 8 then, yeah.
And then you had your first band starting at 10.
Yes.
And what was the first guitar you were using then?
That one was just a generic acoustic with a pickup that I'd bought not online, I'd sent away for it.
But also, didn't you wire that to go through your parents' radio then?
Yeah, wow. My dad, we had the big tube radio in the living room, right? So, we'd all listen to the radio. This was before the TV even arrived. And so I had the pickup. I ordered the pickup, and I said, Dad, I don't have an amplifier. He said, well, I think I know how we can get around that. So he got 2 matchsticks, took the one end off the guitar cord.
Right.
So there's 2 wires, and he found the input on the back of the old tube radio and put 2 matchsticks in there.
He hot-wired you into the radio.
He hot-wired me into the radio. And then bingo, there I was.
How amazing. And so you were playing music in the living room so they could play the radio, or they could listen to you play.
Right. Or they couldn't listen to the radio anymore. Because I was always playing it.
Okay, so I got to know then next, Peter, what was your first effect as you started getting into effects? And obviously with the Eventide now, what did you first pick up? Because you're also known for other sound effects that you do, such as the talk box that I saw you in Vegas on tour out at Red Rock.
Right.
And you were doing your show there with a sold-out crowd.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think the very first effect that I would have used, which was probably the only effect that was available, was a Diamond volume pedal. And the top of it slid to the right, and that was your tone as well. So it was tone would knock off the top, so you could wah. It wasn't a wah-wah pedal, but it was a volume and tone. And that was probably the very first piece of effect piece that I had.
And then when you got to the States and you met the Eventide creators, and obviously, as we were talking about with Jim too, you were involved with the presets on this also, with the Rose.
Well, when Tony sent it to me, I loved it immediately. It was so rich sounding. And then he put me in touch with Jim to just kind of go through it and think of, anything that I would think that would make it better. And I said, well, it's all very well to have one setting, but if we could have half a dozen, 5 or 6 presets on there, it would be wonderful. So, bingo. Here we are, one with presets.
I'll tell you what, and when I heard it at the Winter NAMM show, and I was telling Jim this, Peter, it just blew my mind because, it's so loud at the NAMM show and you have to listen to it with headphones. But it was like just amazing, the tonalities and the versatility of this pedal.
Yep.
And also so much of the other software now, where it was the rack modules, as you had from back in the beginning.
Right.
And now it's all this software, and I'm like going, you can age things in software? I want to make this to where it sounds like 1974, and I just go, zoop.
And with the H9 Eventide, you set it with your phone.
Yeah, the H9 Max is just amazing to where you've got all of the previous H9s in this one unit.
Yeah.
And you can access them with your phone.
I know. And I have 2 on my board, so I have to keep going back with some forwards.
So do you have to use multiple phones then? When you do? Do you have to dedicate a phone just to that?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I know also, on your big tour, going out this year with your farewell tour, you're going to have your son Julian as well.
He's going to be on the 8 of the West Coast dates, yeah. So Julian Frampton Band will be out with us, so it's going to be great. He's actually toured with me before as his duo, just on the acoustic tour.
Right.
But now he's bringing his entire band.
Anybody else? Any other surprises along on the tour this year that you can speak of?
No, I can't speak of, but there will be guests, yes. Kind of like the Guitar Circus
Which
tour.
was amazing when you did that.
you.
That you brought out so many great guitarists and actually shined a light on them with you.
Oh, it was
touring around.
I mean, some of the players, I mean, I never believed that they would have turned up. You know, it was wonderful.
It was like a list of who's who. I mean, you were ahead of your time by setting up that Guitar Circus, because now, you know, years later, everybody's doing it. But you did it like 15 years ago, you know.
Well, thank you. It wasn't quite like that long ago, I don't think, but...
Well, it's so amazing. Once again, thank you, Jim Allard. Obviously, Peter Frampton. Be sure and catch Peter on tour this year for his farewell tour, and you'll be hearing some of the great Eventide sounds when you do see him in concert as well. Thanks for watching The Rockin' Review.